types even used a rest to support it while lighter profile. New types of ignition sources and mechanisms were introduced, as the brown bag. The first one, I consider myself extremely made with a 69 caliber ball with a charge of 125 grains, 5 for priming and 120 for the main charge. Recoil is noticeable but not in any way excessive. There will be a complete video on the subject at some point in the future. The loading and firing of the Brown Bess followed a specific series of drills that were practiced over and over again, known as the platoon exercise. Now this is the subject for another video, where these will be discussed in detail, but by way of a simple, generic demonstration, the procedure was as follows. First, the piece was brought to the priming position, and the cock pulled to the half-cock position. A cartridge was withdrawn from the pouch on the right hip and brought to the mouth. The powder end of the cartridge was ripped off with the teeth, and a small amount of powder was deposited into the pan. The pan was shut with the remaining fingers pulling back on the hammer. The firelock was placed at the left side, and the remaining powder was poured down the barrel. This was followed immediately with the remainder of the cartridge, ball uppermost. The round was duly rammed home and then checked with 2 firm taps, after which the ramrod was returned. Following the loading, the firelock was brought to the shoulder. To fire, the weapon was brought to a position known as the recover and was cocked with the thumb. The musket was then brought down to the present, right eye looking along the barrel towards the target, and the round fired. Following on, the loading process was begun again, while the firelock returned to the shoulder. The process of ignition saw the flint held in the jaws of the cock fall and strike the hammer, or frizzen as it's generally known today. This essentially peeled small bits of metal off its hardened surface, which glowed red hot. These sparks then fell down into the pan and onto the powder therein, igniting it. The resulting flash and heat was passed through a vent in the side of the barrel, where it ignited the main charge, sitting behind the ball, propelling it down the barrel. Flintlocks are not perfect weapons, of course, and they can be temperamental, especially without care and maintenance. When they are looked after, they can, even with a heavy, clunky military arm, be very quick indeed. An important addition to the Brown Bess was the bayonet. Throughout its service life, the bayonet of the Brown Bess scarcely changed. Some 17 inches in length, it was of conventional, if simple design. It featured the typical socket, with zigzag slot milled into it. This fit about the lug at the muzzle, securing it there. These 2 weapons, the musket and bayonet, formed a system that in fact dictated the style and character of the battlefields during the era of the Brown Bess. It's important to consider the reality of warfare in the era of the Brown Bess. British infantry, especially during the Peninsular War, have a reputation for exceptionally destructive and effective musketry. This may be the case, but as important was the character required to close with the enemy. The number of instances in which the French came on only to be stopped by a crushing volley, a rousing cheer, and a deliberate and irresistible charge are many. The defeat of the French Imperial Guard at Waterloo, at the climax of the battle, is perhaps the greatest epitaph bestowed upon the British Napoleonic soldier. Now, the characteristics of the Brown Bess, as with all smoothbore muskets of the era, did not lead to open engagements at long range. But it wasn't just a vehicle for the bayonet either. Here, a short practice was undertaken to see just how accurate the weapon was. 6 rounds were shot at 100 yards. The rounds were fired on my own time, and I was taking measures to aim as effectively as I could. As with all India pattern brown besses, there are no sights, and use must be made of the bayonet load and the general axis of the barrel to attempt some degree of accuracy. As you can see, the musket performed relatively well. A good flint and solid military lock go a long way in that regard. This must be seen as an initial practice, and I must admit, my shooting skills with it have a long way to go. Getting used to the way one must look along the barrel without the benefit of sights to assist is a skill that I have a long way to go to master. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. Not perhaps the best grouping. I'm pretty sure I'm capable of shooting better than this. That said, encumbered by all this kit and clothing and whatnot, it just takes some getting used to. And I haven't put a whole heck of a lot of rounds through my brown bess, especially encumbered as I am here. This will certainly close up after some more rounds downrange. I thought it might be appropriate that some accounts of the use of the brown bess in battle might be read. The 29th Regiment was immediately thrown into open column, left and front, and instantly moved up the hill to attack the enemy, directing our march between the fire of both parties. Without halting, our left made a dashing charge, and after a short but desperate struggle drove the French off the summit of the position. We then wheeled into line, advanced obliquely to our left, and opened fire on the French reserves which were pushing up in support of their discomfited comrades. This decided the affair. The enemy was completely overthrown and fled in confusion, leaving the ground strewed with their dead, dying and wounded, among whom was the colonel of the 9th French Regiment, and quantities of arms and accoutrements. During this affair, when we formed into line, our right companies were some way down the slope of the hill. We could see the French column moving up across our front, their drums beating the charge, and we could hear their officers giving orders and encouraging their men, calling out, "En avant, Français! En avant, mes enfants!" But our well-directed volleys and cheers of victory stopped their progress, and their shattered columns returned in dismay. The 29th Regiment took possession of